shut down my stream and deliver racist rants to an empty room for a few hours, but I got all that out of my system. And I actually did end up generating a McGilchrist-McLuhan synthesis file using Grok, because I've used too many of my Claude tokens. Didn't want to have to buy more. But yeah, I also went ahead and did a comprehensive survey of the knowledge base to get any more theoretical or practical insights into large language models, what they are, how they work, and how to work with them. And yeah, I haven't looked super closely at these, but yeah, they're all right up my alley. I'm very interested in narrative as cognitive technology, predictive processing and active inference, and relevance realization. But yeah, I was just looking at this McGilchrist-McLuhan synthesis, hemispheric modes and media as extensions of consciousness. You know, it gives these things these nice academic titles. It's very fun. It's like running my own journal. But I felt like actually, just looking at this, it seems like McLuhan provides some of the missing pieces in McGilchrist's theory, because that was one of the main criticisms of McGilchrist that was given here. Let's see. There's the cultural historical methodology is unfalsifiable, which in some ways is just a problem with the epistemology of the humanities in general. That's just how different kinds of work get done. They can't all be held to the same epistemic standards as science. But I think McLuhan actually has some explanatory power. He provides a kind of missing middle layer in terms of the effects of technology and media on the human perceptual and cognitive landscape, being one of the forces that mediates the dominance of one hemisphere or another in a particular culture. That technology is an amplifier of, technology is an amplifier of hemispheric tendencies. The dominant mode of attention or medium determines the structure of experienced reality more fundamentally than the specific content. But yeah, and then I had Grok follow up on some open questions. How does McLuhan's laws of media tetrad apply to the current AI medium? Walter Ong, Orality and Literacy. But yeah, I just wanted to jump on stream and follow up because I was doing some more work, and I wanted to actually ask Grok to use the harness's own resources to answer how does McLuhan help to answer some criticisms of McGilchrist. And let's see what happens. So I should be able to find relevant content in the recent session history. And yeah, the Gutenberg galaxy basically tells the story of how the left hemisphere came to dominate modern civilization. Marshall McLuhan's ideas about media as extensions of man can help address some of the criticism of Lovelace and McGilchrist's work on hemispheric asymmetry in the brain. Right, the missing middle layer between the historical, cultural analysis and the neuroscience is mediated by the effect of technology on psychology, which makes sense that those sort of seem like they would be the missing middle pieces. Strengthens McGilchrist's cultural, historical, and phenomenological claims by supplying an independent, non-neuroscientific parallel framework grounded in media ecology. This directly mitigates several of the strongest academic criticisms. And, I mean, yeah, how many academics are seriously reading Marshall McLuhan anymore? Selective inferential overreach, unfalsifiability, self-contradictory method, excessive anthropomorphism. Which, I felt like that anthropomorphism of the hemispheres was by far the weakest criticism, because it is well understood in neuroscience that the brain hemispheres can operate relatively independently. Each one is a more or less autonomous brain unto itself. And so, you know, it's like the next lowest level of psychological organization below the unity of a human person. And it makes total sense to me to anthropomorphize. And, you know, I think much more in terms of personality narratives, so I am happy to anthropomorphize much further down the cognitive stack, as it were. But to treat anthropomorphization of an entire brain hemisphere as some kind of intellectual sin seems silly to me. Because, I mean, you can have a hemispherectomy and walk around living your life with one brain hemisphere. Is it then invalid to think of a person who's undergone such a procedure as a full person anymore? Like, what are you even trying to say when you say it's wrong to anthropomorphize the left and right hemispheres' different capacities for perspective taking? I don't know. I have strong opinions about this stuff. This is why I couldn't have stayed in school. But yeah, I bet we get a nice reply file here. With some grok reasoning. Attention, medium shapes reality's structure. Phenomenological reality, yes. And I suppose technology does literally shape physical reality, as in the Netherlands. This tetrad tool offers a way to test claims about media's effects. Literacy's effects. You know, you find the odd typo, and I mean, this is the output of a reasoning trace that shouldn't really have been captured in the reply file. That bit of activity tracking needs a little more fine-tuning for the grok mode. But overall, yeah, I'm quite happy with how this harness is shaping up. It's a wonderful research tool. I'm having the time of my life. Yeah, I really feel like the term AI psychosis gets thrown around a lot, but a much more appropriate term would be AI mania. And frankly, AI mania has more of a ring to it. You could see it on like a Time magazine cover. Without, you know, you could see AI psychosis on a Time magazine cover too, but it would be a different picture. It would be one you would much less like to see. But yeah. So McLuhan provides independent corroboration of the core pattern described by McGilchrist a nearly identical diagnosis without any neuroscience. Um, and and yeah, I do feel like the Gutenberg Galaxy does real explanatory work in terms of explaining the the means by which modern society came to be characterized by left hemisphere dominance, because it's the linear qualities of print. It's all the things McLuhan talks about how text and print restructure our cognition and our perception, that that bias us in favor of these left brain perspectives on the world. Yeah, and yeah, and right, I get so excited about this stuff, and it does seem clear to me how an AI mania could spiral into something that increasingly resembles psychosis. Um, if I mean, frankly, if one hadn't done one's own homework enough to validate what the AI is saying, and but like, I'm in some ways I'm very specific in giving the AI research directions. Like, there's only so much you can write that counts as a valid continuation of Marshall McLuhan, Ian McGilchrist synthesis. Um, and so in that way, I do keep them very tightly constrained in a way that ensures that the feedback I'm getting from them is grounded in some kind of source, not necessarily reality, but you know I can look up Marshall McLuhan's ideas and tell whether this document makes any sense, um, and and it's like, right, I had to already know that there was a connection in order to tell the AI to make that connection. It didn't come up with that on its own. Right, because I remember at the end of the last stream, I was talking about the McGilchrist files, and right, I speculated that that was going to be my job to do the McLuhan McGilchrist synthesis, and yeah, Grok helped me deliver under budget and ahead of schedule. Yeah, Walter Ong, orality and literacy, more granular, empirically observable distinctions, formulaic thought versus analytic abstraction, aggregative versus context-free expression, situational versus abstract selfhood. And, I've got to read Walter Ong. It's a name I've heard, but yeah, haven't really read anything of his. But yeah, there should be a file here on McLuhan's tetrad enhance obsolesce retrieve and reverse as applied to AI, which I was actually pretty curious about. Maybe we didn't get that. And I just told I told Grok to follow up on those open questions, but yeah, McLuhan provides more mechanism that can counter the claim of unfalsifiability. It's not making strict causal claims. Right, and obviously it's a dynamical process of feedback between society and the psyche, as it were. Right, between human agents and the technological umwelt that they experience, the affordances that manifest to them. The global village thesis has been strikingly confirmed by the internet. Yeah, McLuhan hadn't seen nothing in his day talking about television. Like, he was truly prophetic. So it was the argument from hemisphere labeled history to observable perceptual and social reorganizations produced by dominant media environments. Right, that's the mechanism that the broader historical cultural trends cash out materially in changes in media and technology, and those in turn influence individual human beings as they create the media and technology that will shape future generations. And so you can end up with these feedback loops, as happened in the wake of the printing press, where it came more and more to depend on, we came more and more to depend on literacy and text and visually oriented ways of viewing the world. Okay. Okay, no, I'm gonna ask a really good question here. How? Yeah, I just gotta get this out. The AI will know what I mean. How is the information age? Let's see. There's society suffering the syndrome described by Tainter and the collapse of complex societies. Yeah. And I don't know Tainter's terminology for this because I haven't actually read the book. I've only read about it. I'm such a sued. But yeah, how to refer to modern societies. Modern society's increasingly acute struggle to manage information. An example of the syndrome described by Tainter in the collapse of complex societies. And yeah, hopefully the relevance to McLuhan and McGilchrist here will be clear, but the idea of a tech stack that is foundational to a civilization having a kind of maturity arc where there's this kind of proliferation of technologies as the sort of basic methods of using a key resource are refined, and eventually you settle on a set of best practices for extracting and utilizing this particular resource, and so one layer of the tech stack gets relatively fixed and the innovation moves up to a higher level. And like with the steam engine, you could make a steam engine and then it's like, what could you do with a steam engine? How did you have to improve the steam engine to, and again, I haven't read this book. I've only read about it, but it's on my reading list, which grows much faster than I can read through it. Especially now that I'm not bumming around working at Whole Foods. I actually have to do intellectual work all day. But my job is intellectually stimulating in a very rich way. That's but yeah, modern society is increasingly acute struggle to manage information. Right, and the idea that the gains from increasing the complexity of your systems and processes reach an inflection point where you start to hit diminishing returns on the gains, and the cost of managing each marginal increase in complexity grows super linearly. And so it's a kind of maturity arc where there's a beginning, middle, and end as a civilization exhausts its capacity to use a particular resource or a particular tech tree. And anyone out there who's read Tainter, feel free to drop a better explanation in the chat. Ha ha. I think the answer is yes. It can be seen as an example of Tainter's syndrome. Tainter's theory in the collapse of complex societies, that societies collapse when they invest in more complexity to solve problems. But they face diminishing returns. Each new layer of complexity costs more and yields less benefit, eventually becoming unsustainable. In modern society, our struggle with information overload fits this pattern perfectly. It's like I don't know. We pour massive resources into tech, like the internet, AI, and database to handle growing data volumes, and yes, like 21st century information technology is the most acute example of this, but it is the latest phase of a phenomenon that's been continuous since the invention of the printing press, at least if you follow McLuhan. And so, in some ways it's synonymous with modernity itself. But yeah, so did we just get a reply? Okay, we got some citations. That's fun. Dealing with overload. Tainter's idea is that societies pile on more complex to tackle problems, but at a certain point the extra effort costs way more than it helps. All our fancy info systems. Societies aren't collapsing yet, but the pattern's there, with increasing complexity leading to more strain. But maybe AI will do for Tainter what the Green Revolution did for Malthus, and our capacity to manage complexity will just end up growing so much faster than the actual complexity that our society has to deal with. But I will say there's a good deal of overhang there. We've got a lot of catching up to do in terms of actually getting a handle on the fucking madhouse that is modern society in 2026. I don't know. Again, I feel like my temperament is rather pessimistic on big picture type of stuff. But this stuff does get me very excited, and so moment to moment, my experience of AI features a lot of positive emotion, and yeah, I feel like frankly, I'm so much more intellectually productive than I ever thought I could be in my free time, especially with the demands of my day job. It's really been a treat getting to work with all this cool new stuff. Quantitative assessments of our current predicament. I didn't use the word current predicament. Was that part of a summary to a subagent? Yeah, I said struggle. More sources and volume demand more processing capacity, which itself becomes costly and specialized with declining marginal productivity. Patents versus research inputs, science yield curves, educational expenditures versus outcomes, parallel market trends, R&D efficiency, replication price in science, exponential inputs and incremental gains in areas like pollution control or food production. Oh, no way! How cool. Okay. Okay, so we got. I clicked on the first citation, and it seems to be the full text of The Collapse of Complex Societies by Joseph Tainter. Yeah, scanned in with OCR as a PDF at risk.princeton.edu. Hold on, let me pull up that window for you in OBS. How do I use OBS? Where am I? What am I doing? But yeah, Introduction to Collapse, Collapse in History, China, India, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Hittites, Greece and Rome, Mesoamerica, Casas Grandes, is that South America? The Hokians. I mean, those guys might have been around where I'm at. Were those the mound builders? I know, I think the mound builders were the Mississippians, huh? Because they lived by the Mississippi River. The nature of complex societies, the study of collapse, resource depletion. Right, I read Jared Diamond's book, Collapse, when I was in high school. Yeah, did some kind of report on it. I thought that was really interesting. One anecdote has stood out through the years as particularly relevant. Where one of the societies, I think it's at the end of the book, because he profiles the history of the collapse of like Mayan society and the society on Easter Island and a couple others. But he ends with a discussion of, I think it's Montana, and dying rural communities. And I think he has a direct quote from someone he interviewed for the book, or something he read in a newspaper, that just says something like, a farmer was asked what he would do if he won $1 million, and he said something like, well, like, farming is what I love to do, and I lose money on the farm, so I would just keep farming until the money ran out. And I thought that was so bleak. And it shouldn't require further explanation why that that has stuck with me through the years. But yeah, Collapse by Jared Diamond, very interesting book. But yeah, I think this is like the big boy version of that. It's got figures, it's got an index of figures, that's exciting. Yeah, oh, but here's the intruders, okay. Okay, and so collapse can have a few different reasons. Resource depletion, new resources, catastrophes, insufficient response to circumstances. It seems like kind of a catch-all. Other complex societies. Right, that's many such cases. Intruders, which is a separate thing. Other complex societies, more of a clash of civilization, but like, you know, other complex societies is like when Rome conquered Greece, and intruders is like when the barbarians conquered Rome, would be my guess. You know, I'm just reading the table of contents and hallucinating what might be in the book. That's the thing about human beings, is we're just stochastic parrots that repeat back our training data. None of us literally has a mind or understands anything, right? I'm actually driving myself crazy doing all this AI, and then turning on a camera and feeling like I just have license to think out loud. If it's entertaining someone, all the better. But, you know, I think out loud enough when I don't have a camera on me. At least not that I know of. But at least having this, I can cope that it's for something besides myself. Conflict, contradictions, and mismanagements, that's entirely internal factors, I guess. Social dysfunction. Mystical factors. Chance concatenation of events, okay. The marginal productivity of socio-political change. Like, this is one of the most important gears in the whole mechanism. Marginal productivity of increasing complexity, explaining declining marginal returns. Resource production, information processing. So it does talk about information processing in the context of marginal productivity of socio-political change. Classic Maya collapse. Chacoan collapse. Huh. Oh wow, some beefy epigrams. I'm gonna have to read this in my free time, but this was a super cool find, and I suppose I could have done the web search myself. I'm not an idiot, but you know, I had heard about this book. I'd seen like Twitter threads about it. I'd heard Jordan Hall talk about it, but yeah, never felt like I had the time to sit down and really engage with this book myself. So I never went out and looked up stuff about it. But until now, because it just occurred to me about information processing and the whole tech stack that's downstream of the printing press. You know, as detailed in Marshall McLuhan's wonderful book, The Gutenberg Galaxy, available wherever fine books are sold. I don't know, you might be hard pressed to find The Gutenberg Galaxy at a bookstore near you.